Namaste. This is Tim Halloran. I'm an astrologer from Savannah, Georgia. This is a weekly astrological forecast. I put these videos on YouTube once a week. You can help support future videos by purchasing a reading from me at the link below or subscribing above. We are entering the second week of October, and we are also entering the wormhole of a very powerful, electrically charged month of October, beginning with this lunar eclipse on Wednesday and concluding with a solar eclipse at the end of the month. There is a whole lot of change. The collective is being shaken up. The energy is very fast-paced and fiery and powerful. And we have the blessing of astrology to go for us now, to sort of get the heads up of the energy we're working with, the kind of changes we're dealing with, how to best harness and go with the flow during a considerably tumultuous, crazy, far-out, expansive time. Okay, so let's talk some astrology. We've got the moon in Pisces today. We've also got asteroid Vesta moving into Sagittarius today. We've got two asteroids moving into fire to add to the overall fiery explosion of this month's energy. Tomorrow, the moon is going to move into Aries. And we've got the sun forming an opposition to Uranus that's going to line us up for the lunar eclipse happening the next day. That's Wednesday, the 8th at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. That's going to be conjunct Uranus, forming a grand trine between the planets Jupiter and Mars, and also forming a T-square between Pluto and the Sun and Venus. I mean, this is a powerful eclipse. We've got to talk a lot about Uranus with this eclipse happening in Aries, conjunct Uranus. This is extremely spontaneous, electrified energy. And we're very much feeling it tangibly. And it's also kind of weird how we can feel slightly disembodied through all of this, because we also have Mercury just gone retrograde over the last weekend. And this means that as all of this intensity, all of this chemical reaction, and so much is happening on the outside, our mind is at a standstill. Okay, our mind and our heads are actually not what is leading the game right now, as much as it may not seem like it is. With all of this inventive intuition and realization and brilliance coming through, it's not coming from our rational process of linear thinking, and this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. This is not what's happening right now. It is eureka, explosion, realization, okay, inspiration. And we're going to be talking about spirituality, because when this type of step forward in evolution is happening, and that's really what this is, it is a step forward in evolution. We are inspired. It means that we are in spirit. Okay, this realization, this intuition is not coming from our minds. It's not coming from our rational linear processes. It's being handed down straight from the top. This is what intuition is. It's spontaneous. It doesn't even happen within time. It is just there all of a sudden. A realization is when we suddenly see something that was already there. There is no true putting together or, inventing or, putting this piece there and putting this piece there and a new realization. No, we are seeing something that was already there, already complete, and we just were not aware of it. That is what a realization is. And these are times of profound realizations. And the Mercury retrograde also says that we're looking back throughout this entire life. We're looking at our relationships. We're looking at our friend groups, how those have changed, how that has been linked to our individuality as our individuality has evolved over time. Okay? Over time, it's not just a steady evolution and we just steadily progress, more and more evolved. There are periods where there is sudden leaps in evolution. Okay, we can see this all throughout human history. We can see this all throughout world history. This is actually how nature itself works. Nature isn't a slow and steady, very predictable process of evolution. All right, that's why we haven't mastered it yet. It's actually extremely far out. Astrology reveals that there are these times where there is increased intensity, increased energy. Okay, and the recommendation through all of this is to take this energy and to bring it within ourselves, and to not get too carried away and not get over explosive and over spontaneous, and mostly do not get our minds involved to the point where our minds is taking credit for what's going on, because that's not spiritual. What's happening is spiritual. We need to make, I should say, what's happening spiritual, because that will determine our success through all of this. okay? If we are trying to take credit, if we are going to manipulate matter and, you know, say that it is us who is responsible for this great invention, it is us who is responsible for this miraculous nature that is life, that's when we get in trouble, that's when we fall down, because we have to learn lessons then on our actual mission, our actual individuality, who we actually are. We have to understand our actual relationship to nature, okay? That is why we come here. And this is what spirituality actually is. Spirituality is about understanding your relationship to yourself and to nature and to others, okay? Seen and unseen. So we've got an eclipse in Aries, conjunct Uranus. This is like major electrical fire in the head, realization, the third eye is open, the energy is all up here. We're dealing with the future, we're dealing with future inventions, you know, future revolutions and movements, and all these things are now coming down into the collective. And we need to harness this, and we need to channel it into the earth, we need to channel it into the actual collective. We need to actually harness it and use it productively and carefully to make sure that we're actually forwarding in evolution, okay? So what this means is that we don't just tinker with reality, okay? Because Uranus is the experimenter, all right? And when Uranus kind of goes bad is when it loses its compassionate nature, when it becomes too objective, too scientific, too heartless, and everything is just a toy to play with and see what happens. I'm going to do a test. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to tie a fish to a rock and see what happens. Oh, it sank and died. I'm going to tie a frog to a rock and see what happens. Oh, look, it died. I'm going to inject the entire food supply with genetically modified organisms and pesticides, and I'm going to see what happens. I wonder if it's going to work out the best for us. All right, this is why we have to be grounded. We have to be careful. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We don't want to be the Mr. Scientist guy who did one experiment and I just figured out the entire solution to global poverty. And that is by injecting the food supply with chemicals that is actually destroying the world. It's worsening poverty, you know, it's all of these things. So what I'm saying is we can see the realizations that are happening within us. We can have the opportunity to, you know, take some steps forward in evolution, but let's not take the credit for ourselves, because then we are reducing nature, we are reducing spirituality. Instead, if we can internalize it, this means don't tell everybody about every little idea that you have, because what's going to be happening with all this is there's just going to be so many people butting heads, and there's going to be chaos and confusion and insanity in the collective when too many people get too overblown in their heads and Mercury retrograde is happening and people think that they can just do it the old way. What this is ultimately about is that nothing can be done the old way anymore. We are learning to get into and trust new processes that are ahead of ourselves. So let's not even pretend that we can take credit for this stuff. Let's see the beauty and awe of nature. We know about astrology. We know that this is happening on a collective level. We can feel the energy. We know that this energy is not ours to own. It is the energy of nature. We are a part of nature, okay? We go through these evolutionary jumps, okay? It is a part of a process, a greater process that we can just barely comprehend at this particular time, but we're getting deeper and deeper levels of comprehension. So this is an opportunity for us to make spiritual realization, for us to deepen our level of comprehension of reality, of nature, and thus ourselves. This is the time for us to be seeing our nature, our process, our story, and the wobbles this story has gone on, how we've gone up and down, and we've gone up and down, we've gone up and down, and none of that was good or bad. It was a part of a process that is leading us somewhere that is going to have inventiveness, brilliance, creativity, okay? You know, what this Uranian energy is the revolution. It wants to shake everything up. It wants to be free. But what's happening with these realizations is, you know, it actually just so happens that we already are free. We've worn chains in the past, yes. And we have memories, and we have deep emotional, subconscious memories and beliefs that we still are in chains, but we are not still in chains. So what is happening is we're having these realizations, and we're looking somewhere we've never looked before, or at least not in a long time, and we're like, hey, the chains aren't there anymore. Holy crap. This is going to lead to so many more greater things and ramifications, and this means I can do this, this, and that, and I can run, I can sprint, I can jump. We've got to be very careful, we've got to slow, we've got to appreciate it. appreciate for what it is. That way we can be careful and productive and actually take the next steps in the best possible way. I mean, if you've had a cast on your arm because you broke your arm for 6 months, and as soon as you get the cast off, you're just like, oh, right, I got the cast off my arm. I mean, you're probably not going to re-break your arm. Because the thing is that, you know, that bone has healed. Yes, you have all this freedom. But if you just start flailing your arm as soon as the cast gets off, you're probably going to, like, mess up something or another. You've got to be careful. You've got to be delicate. You haven't used this arm. You haven't bent this arm in months, you know. You can't just all of a sudden, like, twist up all those muscles. It's probably going to be really, you know, rusty. And, you know, you got to go through it carefully. Okay, so these realizations are coming on, and we're realizing I am so much more free than I realized before. I had been dealing with stories and subconscious patterns, okay, that have been deeply integrated that are not true. They're old. They're not real anymore. The past is the past. It's an illusion. I can do all these more things. I have this brilliance at my disposal. I have all this creative energy at my disposal. All right, so the key is gratitude. Be grateful that this is happening. Don't get too ahead of ourselves. Don't start blaming other people and forming enemies and start attacking senselessly, all right? Because this is the energy that the collective is going through right now. We're seeing this in the collective. We're seeing this, all right? We're just declared another war. There's all these things. People are pissed. People are upset because we don't want to be in chains anymore. This Uranus and Aries energy says, I am a powerful individual. I am free. I have free will. I can invent whatever I want. I can make whatever I want. This is very beautiful. This is very good energy, so long as we're keeping it in balance, okay? And because this T-square is with the Sun and Venus in balance, I mean, really make this about harmony. Make this about me and you are going to take each other plane after plane after plane, but we're going to be on the same plane. I'm not trying to jump 50 planes ahead of everybody else because I want to get out of here and I don't want to deal with everybody else and I don't want to deal with the world, because you're going to have to come back. You know, it's like I talked about in the last video. We have to be lifting up the collective conscious. We can't just shoot out of the collective conscious and get so ahead of ourselves and think that we know everything and think that we're free. While the collective is still dealing through all this stuff, no, what's happening now is we are realizing that we are free in our potential, but the collective is not yet free because we have all of these problems and challenges that we are working through, which shouldn't be seen as bad. It shouldn't be seen as senseless prison and torture. It should be seen as the opportunity for us to be able to think of these creative solutions, to invent these new things that is going to forward our evolution and our consciousness in a direction that it's never been before. If we didn't have this challenge, if we didn't have this problems and, you know, these various straitjackets that we wear, and it's like a puzzle that we have to solve. If we didn't have those things, we wouldn't have the motivating force to create this passion, for this passion to build up, for us to suddenly spring forward in evolution, okay? So here's an interesting concept, wasted time. As a Gemini, I worry so much about wasted time. It's something that really pains my mind and I freak out about it when there is no such actual thing as wasted time. Wasted time is not a part of nature because this traditional understanding, you know, of our linear concept of time is not real. So there is no wasted time, you know. So we can think of this, you know, as like when you get sent to prison and you have to sit every day in that prison cell and you get the same meals and you got the same toilet, and it just feels like you are being forced to waste a significant amount of your life, and that is extremely painful for so many people. It's not actually wasted time, because what is happening while you're sitting in that prison and you're feeling confined and you're feeling limited and you're feeling challenged and you feel this frustration start to build, and it just keeps building and building and building. What is that? What is that frustration? Is it bad? Is it a problem? Does it mean that you need to change your outlook? Is it suffering? It's passion. It's raw passion. When we confine ourselves, when anything in nature becomes confined, the spring starts to get more loaded and loaded and loaded, and that tension gets greater and greater, that kinetic energy gets greater and greater, and then it springs. You cannot confine spirit within matter, is an eternal law. Okay, it can happen for a limited amount of time. We can go through all these various temporary experiences with it, but it is not an eternal truth. Therefore, there is no wasted time, because all of this getting trapped in kinetic energy, breaking out, getting trapped, getting kinetic energy and breaking out, that is a part of nature. That is what we are continuously doing. That is the Uranian force. This Uranus fundamental force that ends up being a fundamental part of our own energy system, of our own consciousness, is the force that is constantly moving and constantly breaking out and constantly expanding, especially when it's in a grand trine with Jupiter and Mars. I mean, we are moving out there. Okay, and Uranus says, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. I'm frustrated, I'm pent up, I want to get out of here. I'm frustrated, I'm pent up, I want to get out of here. I don't want to deal with the bullshit. I don't want to deal with the limitation. I don't want to deal with the chores. Let's get as fast as possible. Let's be spontaneous, let's be crazy. Uranus wants freedom, okay? This age of Aquarius is rolling in. Everybody's going crazy with partying. Everybody wants to have crazy sex. It's like this, you know, we've got Burning Man in these things, which is an example of this Uranian energy just wants to express itself into all of these different things, okay? And is this a problem? No, we need to harness this fundamental Uranian energy. But the key with it is to make it spiritual, okay? The difference between cold, heartless Uranus and a Uranus that is evolving us as a collective towards love, towards peace, towards harmony, towards coexistence, towards happiness and comfort, and being able to live in a world that is not confining and limited. This is why Uranus is so intense. It just wants to take us to that place so bad. Okay, Uranus is the higher mind. Uranus already understands about all of this far out nature and what our potential is and what could potentially happen, and so it just beckons us further and further and further. Okay, but we need to see it from a spiritual standpoint, which means let's see it for its inherent fundamental process. Let's see it as a part of nature that we are moving through. Okay, and that means that we are connected to everything, and that means that you can't just put off anything. Okay, you can't just experiment with whatever you want to. You can't just start injecting the food supply with GMOs and not learn why you can't do that. We have to be considerate. We have to be compassionate. We have to incorporate the rest of nature for Uranus to actually work. Okay, if we want to evolve, understand that it is we that are evolving. You don't evolve by yourself. That is not true evolution. This isn't stuff that we can take credit for. Inspiration means we are in spirit. It's coming from spiritual world. Okay, we don't think about this, invent this in our mind. I'm so brilliant, I got inspired to write this musical piece. Does any real musician say, I am such a talented musician that I think of all these great things through my own brilliance and my own knowledge and my own being so much ahead of everybody else? No, a musician can tap into that world and then channel it. And any real musician knows, I'm not actually doing anything. The only thing a musician does is get out of their own way. And this is the key with this energy at this period of time, is let's get out of our own way. That way our own brilliance can shine through, but that means the mind has to step aside, the ego has to step aside. That means where there's drama and there's bickering, instead of me blaming the other person and getting defensive, and I'm so rigid and defensive, I'm going to stick with my truth and make sure you lose no matter what. Let's see that chemical reaction as a part of nature that is giving us the opportunity to confront challenges, that are giving us the opportunity to actually evolve our consciousness. That means that these various chemical reactions, these various, heads bashing and, debates and wars and all these things, these are the challenges that are giving us the opportunity to shine through with our true brilliance that is going to be linked to compassion and selflessness, and us incorporating the fact that we are a part of nature, that nothing goes on without us being a part of us. No process discludes us. Therefore, we cannot harness any process discluding anything else, okay? We have to consider everybody else. We've got to consider the implications. We've got to bounce our ideas off of others and make sure that it is working in harmony with them, that they are okay with us and the direction we are moving in, that we are okay with them and the direction we are moving in. That way we can actually move forward in a direction that's not going to send us back to the drawing board. okay? And then we have to get slammed down and realize that it wasn't us actually knowing everything, that we got ahead of ourselves, okay? So let's really take this download and this incoming gift of intuition, of brilliance, all right, and see it from the lens of gratitude. Be appreciative of it. I mean, this full moon is a powerful full moon every year. It's called a blood moon and happens in October. In India, the goddess Lakshmi is celebrated, and goddess Lakshmi is the goddess of fortune. She gives us gifts. She gives us abundance. She's the one that puts food on the table. She's the one that pays the paycheck every week, all right? It's not actually our boss. It's not actually the government. It's not actually these people that have put themselves in charge, that have manipulated nature to put themselves in a role that they aren't actually eligible or qualified to be in, okay? That's the dangerous side that we don't want to trespass upon. We need to understand that food comes from nature. Okay, medicine comes from nature. If you want true healing, if we want true invention, if we want the type of invention that's going to take us into the future and heal this planet, we have to understand where medicine comes from. And it doesn't come from us manipulating the outside. It comes from the spiritual world. It comes from our angels, our guides, the goddess of fortune. Okay, she gives it to us. Okay, that's why it's instant. It comes out of nowhere. Furthermore, it was already given. You know, a lot of this stuff, as I said, it's like we realize something that was already there. You know, this sudden realization. We're not putting these little cogs and pieces together. We're seeing something that's already there. Oh my goodness, the chains are no longer there. I am free. I'm capable of so much more than I knew. I was just imagining this system that other people want me to imagine because they want to have in place the delusion that they are at a higher status or higher power than anybody else because they have used manipulation to acquire that merit and that position. Okay, that's not what we want to do, and they have no power over us. All of the power is within us because we are spirit souls in a body that is formed out of nature. We are interconnected with nature, therefore nothing can be taken from us. When we are put in prison, when the spring is loaded, it is not an eternal condemnation. There is no such thing as being limited by nature forever. We are breaking free. We are breaking to an entirely new level of seeing things. And that's the other thing, is that all of this really big ramifications and transformation can begin with what may seem a very subtle realization. Suddenly, I realize a very subtle change on how we perceive our day-to-day life, on how we perceive our job, on how we perceive our relationship. Who is our partner? How do we see them? Who is my role? What is my role? What is my fundamental role with other people? It is the most fundamental stuff that is often the most subtle and difficult to see. And when this most fundamental and subtle aspect of ourself changes, really big ramifications happen on the outside. Little tiny thing on the inside, and the spiritual world within your heart changes. Really big ramifications, really big possibilities become apparent to us on the outside. So again, the recommendation is to become quiet. It's so loud and so much chemical reaction and so much tumultuous and so much debate is happening on the outside. We have the saving grace of Mercury retrograde in Libra the rest of this month, starting Friday, where we're going to be able to have that greater objective, and where our minds are actually stronger when Mercury is retrograde, but it's less involved, it's less trying to manipulate. Don't let it manipulate. Let it reflect from this higher standpoint. Let it be quiet and just see how things play out. See how nature actually works. See what it is that we are actually connected to, what we're actually doing, what we're actually dealing with, and don't meddle with it right away. See it from this greater perspective, and then we can have that greater sense of gratitude and appreciation and be just like, wow, this is miraculous. This is really good stuff. And I can just breathe it into my being. Like I said, astrology is always changing. This grand trine will pass. This eclipse energy will pass. But if we can see it and appreciate it and just breathe it in, that's how we can form something that will last the rest of our life. I mean, when we see something beautiful in life, a beautiful mountain range or something, you don't mentally process and and like, oh, look at that right angle right there and that one mountainside and all that. No, you just kind of go in awe and you just soak it all in and just wow. And that moment becomes an eternal moment. Time ceases. And we just breathe it all in, and you know what? Everything is different from then on. And there's no choices with this stuff. Everything is changing, and it's not going to be the same from now on. Whether you're tuned into that subtle spiritual world so you can be aware of that transformation or you're not, it's happening. This change is happening. So let's see it for the best. Let's be grateful for it. You know, change can be tough sometimes. Feeling limited, feeling confined can be tough sometimes. But when we can see it from the greater perspective, when we can see the potential of the process, thus the ups and the downs, the good and the bad is not good and bad. It's all there as a part of the process of nature that is leading us into the future. That way we can take this step in evolution and really actualize this newfound understanding on who we are, on who our relationships are, and thus everything changes. Our relationship to the government, our relationship to one another, everything can change when we change the subtle, fundamental, inner spiritual truth. Okay? So I'm offering a special this month because there's so much going on, a birth chart and a transit reading for the price of just a birth chart on my website. You can check the link below for that. We've got a bunch of other stuff going on at Rasa Leela Healing. Check out the Facebook page. We've got a giveaway going on. We've got a new video series where you can submit questions to me, and we're going to be talking about subjects outside of astrology. So we're harnessing this energy here ourselves and trying to make the best with it, and I hope that you do the same for your and your beloveds. I'm wishing the very best. Namaste.